Welcome back to our channel. Have you ever held a dime in your hand, felt its light weight, and thought nothing of it? Just a simple coin worth 10 cents, hardly enough to buy anything these days. But what if I told you that one of those very same dimes sitting at the bottom of your change jar right now could be worth thousands of dollars? It sounds impossible, but that's the fascinating truth behind coins like the 1965 US 1 dime. Hidden in plain sight, these tiny treasures have shocked collectors and auction houses alike, all thanks to rare minting errors, unusual planchets, and mysterious transitional anomalies that slipped through the US Mint's rigorous quality control unnoticed. The story of the 1965 dime, in particular, reads like a chapter out of a detective novel. To understand its incredible value, we have to go back to the mid-1960s, when the United States Mint was under extraordinary pressure. Silver prices had skyrocketed, and the government made the bold decision to remove silver from circulating dimes and quarters. Beginning in 1965, the dime was struck in a new copper-nickel-clad composition instead of 90% silver. But in that chaotic transition, a few dimes were mistakenly struck on the older 90% silver planchets intended for 1964 coins. These transitional errors are now the holy grail for many collectors, because to the casual observer, they look just like every other dime. Picture it, somewhere in Philadelphia, a few blank silver planchets, left over from the previous year, slipped into the presses as the Mint started producing the new clad coins. Oblivious to the mistake, Mint workers bagged these silver dimes alongside their copper-nickel siblings and sent them into circulation. For years, they rattled around in pockets, cash registers, and piggy banks, slowly disappearing as collectors began to realize what they really were. Today, certified examples of the 1965 silver dime have sold at auction for over $9,000, a staggering return on a coin that was once worth 10 cents. The intrigue doesn't stop there. Other 1965 dimes have been found with different kinds of errors, such as being struck on foreign planchets or on planchets intended for other denominations entirely. Imagine finding a dime that weighs less because it was struck on a penny blank, or one that shows the faint copper core of a clad coin, but with strange incomplete edges or missing layers. These so-called wrong planchet errors are incredibly scarce and always draw attention from collectors at shows and auctions. Each is a unique testament to the chaotic, human side of coin production, mistakes that become legends, and then there are the double die errors, which have fascinated collectors for generations. In some 1965 dimes, close inspection reveals a doubling of letters, numbers, or design elements, particularly in the word Liberty or the date itself. This doubling happens when the coin die, the steel stamp that impresses the design, shifts slightly during the multiple strikes it takes to create it. While most double dies are caught early in production, some sneak through and enter circulation. The result is a coin with an unmistakable, ghost-like echo of its own design, highly prized by error collectors and often commanding prices in the thousands. The magic of the 1965 dime isn't just in its errors, it's also in its place in history. That year marked the dawn of America's modern coinage. The end of silver in circulating dimes and quarters was a big deal, and for many people, it felt like the end of an era. Older Americans who had grown up with the glint of silver in their change lamented the change to the duller, less precious copper-nickel blend. But at the Mint, the decision was purely practical. The rising cost of silver was making it impossible to continue without incurring massive losses. So the silver planchets were retired, but not entirely forgotten. One particularly famous 1965 silver dime sold at auction for just under $10,000 after being authenticated and graded by one of the major coin certification services. The story of its discovery is the kind of moment every collector dreams of. An amateur numismatist going through a bag of old coins spotted something unusual. The coin had a brighter, more lustrous surface, and it just felt heavier in the hand than a clad dime. Testing confirmed it was struck on a 90% silver planchet. That one moment of curiosity turned into a small fortune. Seasoned collectors know that errors like this are exceedingly rare, but they also know they can turn up anywhere. That's the beauty of coin collecting. History hides in plain sight. Every roll of dimes from the bank, every old jar of change inherited from a relative, every pile of coins from a garage sale holds the possibility of a jackpot. But even when no great treasure is found, there's something deeply nostalgic about sorting through coins, holding in your hand the little pieces of metal that have quietly witnessed decades of American life. For everyday viewers who've never looked at coins before, the story of the 1965 dime is a reminder to pay attention to the small details. Check the dates. Weigh your coins if you can. Silver dimes weigh a hair more than clad ones, about 2.5 grams versus 2.27 grams. Listen to the sound they make when dropped on a hard surface. Silver rings with a high, clear note, while clad coins have a duller tone. And look closely at the edges. Silver dimes lack the copper stripe that's obvious on clad coins. These little clues can help you find something extraordinary hiding among the ordinary. The fascination with errors doesn't stop with 1965 either. Collectors also prize other transitional and error dimes from neighboring years. Some 1964 dimes have been discovered struck on clad planchets meant for 1965, effectively the reverse of the famous silver error. Similarly, a handful of 1968 and 1970 dimes have surfaced with dramatic double die obverse errors, where the date and motto appear clearly doubled to the naked eye. These coins, too, have sold for impressive sums at auction, sometimes reaching into five figures. One particularly memorable auction story involves a 1965 silver dime found decades after its minting, in a collection passed down through 3 generations of one family. At a major auction house, competitive bidding quickly drove the price well above its estimate, finally hammering at $9,775. The stunned owner later said he'd almost spent the coin without a second thought when he was a teenager. It was only his grandfather's insistence on saving old-looking dimes that kept it safe all those years. Stories like this underscore how easily these rare coins can slip through our fingers, and how sweet the reward can be when they're finally recognized for what they are. Even proof coins from the mid-60s can have their own surprises. In 1965, the Mint did not produce traditional proof sets due to the ongoing transition, opting instead for so-called special mint sets. But these sets, too, can contain striking errors, from cameo contrasts that were unintentional to misstruck or even double-struck coins. Collectors pore over these sets with magnifying glasses, hoping to spot a mistake that escaped notice half a century ago. Whether you're a seasoned collector or someone who's never thought twice about the change in your pocket, the story of the 1965 dime is a lesson in paying attention. It's about appreciating the small details and knowing that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are hiding in plain sight. Coins are more than just money, they're history, art, and chance all rolled into one. So tonight, when you're emptying your pockets or cleaning out that old jar of coins on the shelf, take a moment. Look at the dates. Weigh a few. Listen for that clear silver ring. Because you never know, the next great discovery might be sitting right there, waiting for you to notice. If this story has sparked your curiosity, here's your call to action: go check your coins. Pull out that old jar, those rolls from the bank, even the ones tossed in your car's cup holder. Every dime tells a story, and some of them tell stories worth thousands of dollars. Don't let them slip by unnoticed. After all, history belongs to those who take the time to look for it. And remember, the next time you hear that faint, bright ring of silver against a tabletop, don't ignore it. It could be the sound of your own little piece of American history, waiting to be discovered. Have you ever wondered if the change rattling in your pocket could secretly be worth a fortune? Most of us glance at a dime, barely notice its gleam, and spend it without a thought. But what if that little 10-cent coin you almost handed to a vending machine could actually fetch tens of thousands of dollars at auction? That's the incredible story of the 1969 US 1 dime, a coin that seems ordinary yet hides a fascinating history of minting mistakes, transitional quirks, and rare errors that have turned it into a prized collectible worth as much as $130,000 in some cases. It's hard to believe a single dime could be worth so much. But the magic of the 1969 dime lies in its quiet defiance of expectations. You see, the late 1960s was a transformative period for U.S. coinage. Just a few years earlier, silver had been stripped from circulating coins, and the U.S. Mint was still adapting to the challenges of the copper-nickel clad composition. Striking these new clad coins wasn't always smooth, and errors, some subtle, some spectacular, crept into the production lines. The 1969 dime is a perfect example of how the mint's growing pains led to some of the most valuable coins ever to slip into circulation. To truly appreciate this coin, you need to picture the scene inside the Philadelphia Mint in 1969. Millions of dimes were being struck every day to keep up with demand. The dies, those steel stamps that impress the design into each blank planchet, had to endure incredible pressure and thousands of strikes. Sometimes, a die would shift or fail during preparation, leading to doubling. One of the most celebrated varieties of the 1969 dime is the dramatic doubled die obverse. Collectors who have found these marvel at how crisp the doubling appears. Look closely and you can see the letters of Liberty, the motto, "In God We Trust," and even the date itself appear doubled, as though the coin carries a faint shadow of itself. These doubled dies are the result of a misalignment during the die's creation. Rather than being properly seated during each hubbing, the die shifts slightly, leaving a secondary impression that will then be transferred to every coin it strikes. For casual observers, the effect is subtle. But to collectors, that ghostly doubling is like a beacon calling out from the past, proof of a rare and costly mistake that somehow made it into circulation. Authentic examples of the 1969 double die obverse have fetched enormous sums at auction, often starting in the tens of thousands and climbing rapidly, but doubling isn't the only surprise hidden in the 1969 dime. Transitional errors and wrong planchets add even more intrigue to this unassuming coin. For instance, some 1969 dimes were mistakenly struck on leftover silver planchets from earlier years. Although silver was officially removed from dimes in 1965, the mint has a history of planchet mix-ups, especially during high-volume production. These silver 1969 dimes weigh slightly more than the standard 2.27 grams of their clad counterparts and have a distinctive high-pitched ring when dropped on a hard surface. A handful of these accidental silver strikes have been verified, and they, too, command serious money from collectors who understand just how rare they are. Other 1969 dimes have surfaced with even stranger errors, being struck on foreign planchets, for instance, or showing partial clad layers missing, revealing the copper core in unusual ways. Some have misaligned dies, broad strikes, or off-center designs. Every one of these anomalies tells its own unique story, a little accident that makes the coin a one-of-a-kind survivor from the chaos of the mint floor. Collectors call these mint errors, but for those who find them, they're more like tiny miracles. What makes these coins so enchanting isn't just their value but their connection to history. In 1969, America was in the midst of profound change. That summer, astronauts walked on the moon, the counterculture clashed with tradition, and people across the nation carried these very dimes in their pockets. These coins have been witnesses to gas station visits, phone booth calls, soda machine clicks, and yet some of them carried secret imperfections unnoticed by everyone who spent them. It's poetic, really, how something so small could carry such weight. One story that collectors love to retell is of a young man in the 1980s who inherited a small jar of coins from his grandfather. Among the dozens of dimes was a 1969 with a peculiar look to it. The date seemed different. Under a magnifying glass, the doubling on the date and letters was unmistakable. That coin eventually went to auction and sold for more than $65,000. And it had been sitting in a mason jar in a garage for years, gathering dust. That's the kind of story that keeps collectors searching, roll after roll, jar after jar, because you never know when you might strike silver, or in this case, something even better. Even proof and special mint set coins from 1969 have been known to harbor unusual errors. While regular proof production had resumed by then, some dies were overused or improperly maintained, producing coins with dramatic doubling or other striking irregularities. Though far fewer than their circulating cousins, these proofs with mistakes are even more coveted because of their rarity. They're a vivid reminder that even in the controlled environment of proof production, perfection is elusive. For seasoned collectors, the 1969 dime represents a thrilling chase. For beginners, it's an inspiring example of how a little knowledge and attention to detail can lead to incredible discoveries. And for everyone else, it's a nostalgic window into a time when a dime could buy you a cup of coffee and a little bit of the American dream. If you've never looked closely at your change before, now is the time to start. The 1969 dimes with doubling can be spotted even without fancy tools if you know what to look for, though a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe helps. The silver transitional errors can be found by weighing coins or listening for their distinctive ring. And even if you don't find one of these treasures, the hunt itself is part of the joy, an excuse to slow down, to pay attention to the little things, and to connect with history in a tangible way. So tonight, as you empty your pockets or sort through that dusty jar of coins you've been meaning to get rid of, stop and look closer. Check those dates. Tilt them in the light. Feel their weight. You never know, there just might be a 1969 dime hiding among the others, waiting to reveal its secret and change your life forever. And just in case you're wondering how much that little dime could really be worth, here's the stunning truth. Verified examples of the rare 1969 double die obverse and silver transitional error dimes have sold at auction for anywhere between $55,000 and an astonishing $130,000. Don't let your own little piece of history slip away unnoticed. The next time you hold a dime, take a moment to see if it's just another coin, or the discovery of a lifetime. It's easy to overlook the smallest things in life. A dime is just a sliver of metal, light enough to forget in your pocket, small enough to slip between the couch cushions, unassuming enough to spend without a second thought. But sometimes the smallest things hold the biggest surprises. What if I told you that one of those seemingly ordinary dimes, specifically, a 1990 US 1 dime, could actually be worth tens of thousands of dollars? That little coin you almost didn't bother to pick up off the sidewalk might just hide a rare story of minting mishaps, transitional quirks, and collector passion that makes it worth as much as $110,000 today. The tale of the 1990 dime is one of quiet drama. By 1990, the US Mint was running like a well-oiled machine, churning out billions of copper-nickel-clad coins every year. But even in such a highly controlled environment, perfection was elusive. A handful of coins that year escaped into the world with rare and fascinating flaws that have turned them into treasures for sharp-eyed collectors ever since. Picture the scene at the Philadelphia Mint in 1990, workers tending to massive presses, rolls of blank planchets waiting to be struck, and the constant thunder of steel dies stamping designs into metal at lightning speed. Everything about the operation screamed efficiency, but it's in the cracks of that relentless routine where mistakes slip through. Among the most coveted 1990 dimes are those struck with a double die obverse. On these rare examples, the details of the coin's face appear doubled, an eerie shadow that's unmistakable when you know what to look for. The letters in Liberty, the date itself, and the delicate, In God We Trust, all seem to echo, as if the design is layered on itself. This effect comes from a misalignment during the creation of the die, when it shifted slightly during hubbing. Once that flawed die was put into service, every dime it struck carried the same ghostly doubling. To the untrained eye, it might just look like wear or smudging. But to a collector, it's magic, a whisper from the mint floor saying, here's a mistake you weren't supposed to see. These double die obverse 1990 dimes are incredibly rare and fiercely pursued at auction whenever they appear. Then there are the transitional errors. Even decades after the transition from silver to copper-nickel clad, the mint occasionally mixed up its planchets. A small number of 1990 dimes have been discovered struck on leftover silver blanks, a shocking throwback to pre-1965 composition. These weigh slightly more, feel a little different in the hand, and ring with a distinctively high, clear tone when dropped. It's one of those oddities no one expects to find, but a few lucky collectors have uncovered these silver imposters hiding in plain sight, and the surprises don't stop there. A few 1990 dimes have turned up struck on completely wrong planchets, intended for foreign coins or even US cents or nickels. These errors often result in coins that are slightly smaller, larger, or oddly colored compared to their standard siblings. Off-center strikes, broad strikes, and dramatic die breaks have all been seen on 1990 dimes as well, each telling its own little story of the chaos that can happen when machines meant to be perfect slip up. One of the most famous examples surfaced in the early 2000s, when a young woman sorting through her father's old coin jars spotted a 1990 dime that just looked different. The date and motto seemed strange under her magnifying glass, and she noticed a doubling on the letters she'd never seen before. Skeptical but curious, she took it to a dealer, who gasped the moment he saw it. That coin eventually sold at a major auction for nearly $75,000, life-changing money for a single coin that had sat in a jar for years, passed over again and again as nothing special. Even proof dimes from 1990 have their mysteries. Some collectors have discovered 1990 proof dimes without the S mint mark, a mistake that should never have happened given the precision of proof coin production. These no S proof dimes are an especially rare and sought-after variant, and when they appear, they cause a stir in numismatic circles. What makes the 1990 dime so fascinating is how easily it could go unnoticed. Unlike older coins with bold designs and dates that scream history, this is a modern coin, barely over 3 decades old. It feels contemporary, familiar, just another Roosevelt dime like billions of others. And yet, among those billions are a few that hold incredible value. Collectors love the chase because of stories like this. A single roll of dimes from the bank could hide a prize worth more than a luxury car. A little change jar on your dresser could secretly hold your ticket to an unforgettable auction. And even if you never find one, the hunt is part of the appeal, an excuse to slow down, to look closer, to feel connected to a long tradition of searching for treasure in the most unexpected places. The 1990 dime isn't just a coin. It's a tiny time capsule from an era of quiet mistakes and hidden drama, waiting for someone to notice. It's a reminder that even the smallest, most ordinary things can carry extraordinary stories if you take the time to look at it. So tonight, before you spend that handful of change on a coffee or let it disappear into a tip jar, stop. Take a closer look. Turn those dimes over in your fingers, tilt them into the light, see if one of them whispers its secret to you, because here's the truth: authentic 1990 US dimes with the rare double die obverse, silver transitional errors, or the elusive, no S proof have sold at auction for staggering sums, anywhere from $42,000 to as much as $110,000. That's not just pocket change. That's a life-changing discovery hiding in plain sight. Don't let yours go unnoticed. The next time you hold a dime, remember, it might just be the most valuable coin you've ever owned. Sometimes the most remarkable stories are hiding right under our noses, in the smallest, most unassuming places. A dime is easy to ignore. It's just a tiny silver-colored disc, light enough to forget in a jacket pocket, ordinary enough to hand over at the checkout without a second thought. But the story of the 2008 US 1 dime proves that even the most modern, most overlooked coins can carry secrets worth tens of thousands of dollars. Imagine finding a dime that looks like every other one you've seen, but discovering it's actually worth up to $92,000. This is the story of how a seemingly ordinary 2008 dime became a modern-day treasure. The 2008 Roosevelt dime arrived at a time when the US Mint was producing coins at unprecedented speed. Billions of dimes poured out of the Philadelphia and Denver mints, each one showing the familiar profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch, oak branch, and olive branch on the reverse. They were workhorse coins meant for daily life, never intended to be rare or special. And yet, even in such a controlled process, mistakes happened. In the humming, deafening halls of the mint, where presses pound out thousands of coins per minute, precision is paramount, but no system is perfect. Somewhere in those massive operations, a few coins slipped through that never should have. They looked like normal 2008 dimes at first glance, but closer inspection revealed strange details, tiny flaws and fascinating anomalies that made them instantly valuable to collectors who knew what to look for. One of the most sought-after errors on the 2008 dime is the double die obverse. On these rare pieces, you can see doubling in the inscriptions. Liberty seems to have a faint shadow, the motto, "In God We Trust," almost looks layered, and even the date itself appears slightly doubled. This happens during die production, when the die that stamps the coins is accidentally impressed twice at a slight offset, creating a subtle but unmistakable doubling effect. It's not easy to spot without magnification, which is exactly why so many of these dimes have slipped through unnoticed. Another group of rare 2008 dimes comes from planchet errors, coins struck on the wrong kind of blank. The US Mint sometimes has leftover blanks from earlier years or even from different denominations, and every so often one finds its way into the presses by mistake. Collectors have discovered 2008 dimes struck on foreign planchets, on copper cent blanks, and even on experimental materials. These coins often feel lighter, look a bit off in color, or are slightly smaller or larger than usual. To a casual observer, they just seem odd, but to a collector, they're gold. There are also fascinating striking errors among 2008 dimes. Some have been found with off-center designs, where part of the image is cut off and a blank crescent of metal remains. Others were broad-struck, meaning the retaining collar failed and the metal spread outward into a misshapen circle. A handful of dramatic die cracks and cuds, where a piece of the die broke off, leaving a raised blob of metal on the coin, have also been seen on 2008 dimes. These kinds of errors are always exciting because they tell a story of chaos and imperfection amid the mint's orderly rhythm. One particularly memorable discovery happened just a few years after 2008. A man sorting through his loose change after a grocery run noticed something odd about one of his dimes. It just didn't look quite right. On closer examination, he saw faint doubling on the date and letters. Skeptical but intrigued, he brought it to a local coin dealer who confirmed that he had stumbled on a rare double die obverse. The coin eventually sold at auction for over $60,000. That humble little dime, forgotten in his pocket for weeks, became the most valuable thing he owned. Even proof coins from 2008 have their quirks. The mint produces special proof sets each year, carefully struck with polished dies on pristine planchets to create sharp, mirror-like coins. But in some rare cases, a proof dime may leave the mint missing its signature, mint mark, or with other subtle anomalies that collectors covet. These coins can be worth many times more than a standard proof dime if identified and authenticated. What's remarkable about the 2008 dime is that it doesn't look rare. It feels modern, familiar, utterly ordinary, just another coin to spend without a second glance. That's what makes finding a rare one so thrilling. It reminds us to pay attention, to look closely, to see the stories hiding in the smallest corners of our lives. For collectors, the 2008 dime is proof that even in a modern era dominated by technology and automation, mistakes still happen. And those mistakes are what make the hobby of coin collecting so endlessly rewarding. The thrill of discovery isn't reserved just for ancient gold or colonial silver. It can be hiding in the change you got back from your morning coffee. So next time you find yourself with a pocketful of coins, take a moment. Spread them out on the table, hold each one up to the light, turn it in your fingers. Look at the date. Look closer. Because among those billions of 2008 dimes, there are a few that tell an extraordinary story, and if you're lucky enough to find one, a double die obverse, a wrong planchet strike, an unusual proof, it could change your life. In fact, rare 2008 US dimes with dramatic mint errors and striking anomalies have sold at auction for as little as $30,000 and as much as $92,000. That's no longer just spare change. That's a hidden treasure. Check your pockets. Check your old jars. The next great coin story could be waiting right in your hand.